Hello, welcome. A little bit, just giving folks a moment to settle in and for my streams to feed over to LinkedIn and to Facebook. If you're joining me live or for the replay, welcome. Really glad you're here. And it looks like LinkedIn is cranking. Let's see what's happening over on Facebook. Sometimes that can be a little tricky, but we look like we're good. Final thing, just going to set up my chat and my notes. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining today. My name is Wendy Holtmark. I am a coach who helps women in leadership flip the script for today's changing world and define success on their own terms. This is All Things Change a Little Bit. It's a bite-sized edition of my weekly program, All Things Change. And during the month of March, which we are still barely in, we are focusing on leading yourself. So this is all about things related to leading ourselves from within to become the most effective leader, professional, human that we want to become. And burnout is such a huge topic these days. And I really want to talk about simple shifts you can make that will prevent burnout because we're reducing stress. Really huge topic again these days. And there's lots out there about things like self-care. I'm a huge fan of self-care, but often by the time we get to self-care, we are fixing a problem. And what I'm going to be talking to you about today is more proactive. It's more about how to prevent stress from occurring to begin with. So all the better, right? If we can prevent stress from occurring to begin with. So when I think about stress and what leads to burnout, the image that immediately comes to my mind is that hamster in the wheel. That's just a metaphor that works for us a lot. And why is that? It's because this world that we're in is changing incredibly fast. Technology is changing incredibly fast. The impact that has on the businesses that we're a part of is huge. And so often our response is to run faster. That's a normal response. It's an understandable response. But when we are in a hamster wheel, what happens? We don't catch up. The wheel just keeps moving faster. I believe that this is actually enjoyable to hamsters, but it is not so great for us humans when we are in that frame of mind. So the thing that I'm going to be focusing on and wrapping this whole conversation around is focus on the process, not the outcome. So that's the concept. That's it. And we're going to dig into it, but I'll say it one more time because it's super important. It's also super simple. Focus on the process, not the outcome. So what happens when we focus on our outcome? So we are wasting a lot of energy because we're focusing on what we can't control. That's when we're running faster, 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 but the target keeps moving further and further away somehow. We experience frustration, that leads to stress, and that leads to burnout. And essentially, that stress that we experience when we focus on the outcome is that we are resisting something that is ultimately out of our control. We're fighting to make it within our control or just railing against it. It's exhausting. It doesn't leave us a lot of energy to produce good results. So that outcome focus is what we're going to refer to as performance orientation. And on the other hand, when we focus on the process, so we're saying focus on the process, not the outcome. So when we are focusing on our process, we're focusing on what is in our control. We're focused on things like preparation, strategy, mindset. These are things that we can control. And that leads to mastery orientation because we are focusing on what is going to make us better. So I'm going to just address what might be the elephant in the room, which is, okay, that's nice, Wendy, but my organization only cares about outcomes. So I get rewarded for my outcomes. I have very ambitious targets that I feel a lot of pressure to meet. So what's ironic here is that when we focus on mastery, that process orientation, we actually get better results. And so that that mastery orientation gives you the results that you are hoping for when you slip into performance orientation and start focusing on those outcomes. So why is that? It's because when we focus on um, the process, we are focusing on improving what goes in. And when we focus on improving what goes in, we get better things coming out at the end. If we just skip to the part where we're focusing on what goes out at the end and we're just staring like, oh, is this going to be a good outcome? We didn't pay any attention to what we were putting into the process, right? So, of course, we're not going to get the same results. So, the reason this reduces stress is because we are, again, focusing on what we can control, basically. So let's talk about something else that comes up a lot when we are developing a process to improve and to grow and to meet our goals, which is handling mistakes. So when we are outcome focused or performance oriented, mistakes equal failure, and that failure can get really hard to move past. We're stuck in that past of, and analyzing that failure, feeling badly about it, trying to avoid thinking about it. When on the other hand, we have a mastery orientation, we can actually think of it this way, which is you can't make a mistake. It is actually impossible for you to make a mistake because at all times you are doing the best with what you have available. And what is available to you at any moment consists of your information, your energy, your maturity, your wisdom, your experience, all of that together. So when you make a mistake, you are lacking something that hopefully you now have. And so with that perspective on mistakes and that perspective on failure, you can then be more in the present. You can let go of that past. You can say, what new information do I have now? How is that going to inform what I do next? So how do you decide what your process actually is? It sounds like a simple concept, but when you try to dig in and really think like, okay, that's nice, but how do I work on my process? It's because there are multiple levels to that process. So there's the process that you apply when you are thinking about a task. There's a process you can apply to completing your job effectively. And then at the highest level, there's a process you can apply to becoming the best professional or leader or human that you want to become. So we're going to start with that last one. And the reason we're going to start with that last one is because that actually has a very nice effect on all the other stuff. So when you have a solid process that you are following to become an optimal leader, for example, then how you approach a certain task becomes much more clear because you have that bigger picture of your process. So let's talk about that process of becoming the leader you want to become. So here is where it's helpful to get a very clear picture of what it looks like to be a leader on an ideal day. So you can think of this however it comes to your mind, whether it's performing a certain task like leading a meeting or conducting a presentation or having a difficult conversation or whatever it's going to be. How you picture yourself showing up in those moments that are really important helps define and articulate what your ideal leadership state is. And then you can also think about things like how you feel as you are entering into some of those activities on that ideal day, being your ideal you. How do you feel about what you're doing? How do you feel about yourself? And then finally, thinking about, if you fast forward to the end of that day, and you have a conversation with people around you about, the impact of your work, of how you approach things, of how they connected with you, you are starting to get a very clear picture of the kind of leader you want to become. Because this process that we're talking about at this highest level is about who you are becoming. So as you develop this picture, start to pull out the words that have the biggest impact to you and maybe where you feel like you have the biggest gap now between today and where you're headed. So then that informs actions you're going to take on that journey, on that process, and that is the process. So you can develop this approach to becoming the leader that you want to be, by identifying the descriptions of that leader and then the actions you're going to take to become a little bit more like that person every day. So as you become that person, now when you approach your job and when you approach your tasks, you have more of a framework that you're working towards. You have conscious choices that you're making, and that can reduce the stress you experience when you're feeling like you've got that friction between what is expected of you and what you can actually achieve. So let's talk now about how you can approach it more at the task level, because there's something called three-level goals that I want to share with you. And this is, again, all about simply getting you out of the space of worrying about things you can't control and ultimately moving you to the space of things that you can control. So let's say, for example, you have a goal, and that goal is you're going to deliver this important presentation, and you really want at the end of that presentation to persuade your audience to your position. So maybe that position is about resourcing. Maybe you are making a case that you need more people or more funding or something. You need more resource for what you want to get done, or you just want to make the case effectively and persuasively that your pet initiative is really important and that people are going to support it, whatever it is. So ultimately your goal is to persuade people, but you actually can't control them. And so this is a space doomed for heavy stress. And ultimately, if we have a series of these, it can lead to burnout. So we're going to shift our focus away from that by going down a level deeper to your second layer of that goal. Your second layer of that goal is to put in the preparation that leads to a good presentation. So your second level of that goal is really all about the preparation. And yet something could still go sideways with that, because if you get sick and it cuts into your preparation time, or there's a big emergency and half the people can't come to your meeting, there's lots of stuff still that can be outside of your control. And so the ultimate layer of that goal, that bottom layer, is always the same, which is I'm going to learn from this experience. So the three levels of that goal, the first one, there's typically something that you would like to see happen, but it's ultimately outside of your control. That middle level goal is really kind of the sweet spot of where you can actually control what is happening and the output. And then that ultimate goal is really that you learn from the experience. So in summary, we take this perspective that we are here to master the process, and in mastering the process, we get the outcomes that we desire. We view mistakes differently, that we actually can't make mistakes because it's just part of our process, and we're doing our best with everything that we have available, and we move forward. And then we have this ability to, at the highest level, to get clear on who we want to become as a leader, as a person, so that we can develop a formal process to become that. And then final point is you can use 3-level goals in order to reduce your anxiety and stress about outcomes by narrowing your focus to the things that you can control, and ultimately what you're going to learn and how you're going to become better because of the experience that you are having. So that is it for today. I'm going to make a couple of announcements. If you're here with me live, if you have any questions or comments, throw them in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. But my announcements for today are that I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks. So I have 2 trips, the next week and the week after. I can't believe I'm actually going to get on a plane for the first time since 2019, twice in 2 weeks. When it rains, it pours. So I will be back on April 19th with a guest. And then my second announcement is you can always learn more about this sort of topic and get to know me better as a coach at wendyholtmark.com. That's where you can set up a call if this topic really resonates with you. It's a great space to work with a coach if you're curious about it. So please do set up a call with me if you're interested. You can join my newsletter there. Weekly, I share content that's like this. in nature, and hopefully you get a lot out of that. And then finally, at the very top of my website, I now have available to you a free workbook. This particular workbook is on the topic of career transitions, and very hot topic these days. A lot of my clients are in that space, and so I thought I'd put together a free resource for lots of other people, so you can download that there. All right. Thank you so much for joining today. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.